In Unit 5, we're going to start looking at string functions. So we're going to start working with variables other than numbers. There'll be characters and strings of text. And then we're also going to start looking at random numbers and how they can be applied to our program. So in this first lesson here, we're going to look at the string data type itself and talk about what it is and how values are stored. And then we're also going to look at string indexing, and you'll be able to explain that by the end of this lesson. Your 3 learning targets are that you can explain the purpose of a string variable type and how it is stored in memory, that you can explain the indexing of a string, both forwards and backwards, and that you can explain and use concatenation and repetition of strings. So first, some background on the string variable. This is what stores text, which is basically a character or a sequence of characters. So you're treating these as the characters that they are. So even if there's a 1 there or a 2 there, it doesn't work like a number, it's a character. And so these are assigned using double quotations to signify this is a string. So you've probably noticed that every time I've assigned a string variable into our program, so say when we did the yes or no program, I use double quotations because that's how we tell our program this is in fact a string. That's also why we use double quotations in print statements to again tell our program this is a string. So the string function, which you'll see right here, it's str parenthesis, and then we put a value inside of it and close off the parenthesis. This is the first function we're going to look at today, so we can really look at the difference between strings and integers. And what this function allows us to do is convert another variable type to a string. It's really helpful when we want to convert a number into a string. So really, this section of code is where this is important. So if you, for some reason, had a number 1 that you're working with in your program, it's a number, and then say we had a second variable, and that string, we'll call it string 1, said the word score. Okay, and we wanted to concatenate and print these together using a plus sign. So if we wanted to do that, we tried to do string 1 plus num1 as is, you're going to get an error because you can't add a string plus a number. But what we can do is we can convert any number into a string by using this string function here. So if we put str and then we put our variable name inside of it, it will turn it into a string and then we save it in a new location. So instead, we could concatenate the string version of number 1 plus this string of score here, and our program would run. So this function is really helpful during your print statements when you're trying to add together and concatenate a number of strings together. Everything needs to be a string to add strings together so you can easily convert it. Now, we're also going to type in a program together. So what I need you to do is go into your files, and I need you to open up a new Python file, and then go into your computer science projects, add Unit 5, Lesson 5, or add Unit 5, add your in-class projects, and then do Unit 5, Lesson 1, string function. So I need you to add that in if you want to have this example written down for you. So what we're going to here is we're going to convert numbers to strings and then show how numbers and strings print differently. So where we're going to start here is we're going to create a variable called, we'll call it num1. And this is going to be set equal to 4. So this creates an integer variable. Then we're going to do a second number that's equal to a float. So here we have creates a float variable. Now what we're going to do is we're going to convert these both into strings. So I'm going to do string of num1. So I'm going to put the string function around num1. And notice here as I'm typing this in, it's showing me some options that I have. The string function, we can see if we put something inside of it, is going to return a string. There's a couple of different options. We're going to take this first option, and we're going to put num1 inside of it, close it off, and now what's going to happen here is it's going to turn num1 into a string and save it in string num1. So here we're going to turn num1 into a string and save it in string num1. And we're going to do the same thing with num2. Return num2 into a string and save it in string num2. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to print these out to the screen and show the differences between the print statements. So first I'm going to say here in quotations to make a note to myself, printing integers added. I'm going to do num1 plus num2. So making a note here, this is where I'm adding the integers together, and I'm going to show what happens when I print them to the screen. And then I'm going to do printing strings added. And I have string num1 plus string num2. If I now save and run this to the screen, what you see are two different values. So here, when the integers are added, they work as numbers. So they are 4 plus 5.5 is in fact 9.5. However, strings, when they're added, get smushed together. So if you want to make a note here, 4 plus 5 equals 9.5, and then here, make a note, strings are smushed together. That way you have an idea of what happened. But this is how integers and strings work differently, which is where this string function is really nice because it'll allow you to turn a number into a string so that value can then be used and added to other strings.